What is up, people? This is Reese, or Next Gen Novelist, or perhaps you know me by a myriad of other names on the internet. And it's 3 minutes past 6 in the morning. I shouldn't really be awake this early because I'm not usually awake this early, but I've just put together this audio footage of my speed pitching session with the agents that visited my university for a creative writing event. Funny thing about this event, just like the one we had last year, when I wasn't a student there at the university yet, but I still attended anyway, there's not many people that go, and usually it's you get a couple people from outside the uni that are just hard on it, just want to go and attend as much as they can. But then you also get the creative writing students, and I think that's the bulk of what makes up the people that attend. Is obviously the people studying the subject in the university. And I was just that oddball because I didn't come from outside uni and I wasn't a creative writing student. I was a student, I am a student at the university, but I don't study creative writing. And there was a part, and I do have this on audio, of the students asking me, the creative writing students asking me how comes I don't study creative writing. And I didn't put that in the video because I don't want the video to be way too long. It's already going to be quite lengthy, and I didn't think it was as relevant. But if people really want to hear that as just a little bit of bonus audio, then I don't mind throwing that out there. But basically, this is just a video of me pitching my story to literary agents. Honestly, I already knew going into it that I wasn't going to get, like something out of this in the way that maybe you would hope. The reason why is because I'd done my research and I knew that the agents that were in attendance, none of them were, selling or representing the genre that I've written my story in. Now, that being said, I obviously still went because it was on my bloody doorstep, as it was at university, and it would be stupid to not take up such an opportunity for free at that, to speed pitch to literary agents. So I took it anyway, hoping to get some value out of it. I wouldn't say that I learned an immense amount, but there were a nice couple things that I learned from it. And I'll say this, the main thing though was there was a nice feeling in speaking to somebody about my story that really got it, that wasn't a writer. It was nice to speak to people about my story. Obviously, I couldn't go into a lot of depth about it because it's speed pitching. But for the amount that I could go into it, I was quite pleased that with how receptive they were, and they seemed quite interested and intrigued. You'll hear for yourself anyway. It is quite hard to compress all these ideas you have in your head, and it was difficult to do it. There are times when I'm stuttering a bit, I think, got a bit of nervous laughter going on. I'm not gonna lie, I cringed here and there, but it's my own audio, it's my own voice, I would find it a bit cringy. You might find it cringy too. I'm just forewarning you that there is potential cringe in it. But I think it's still quite a nice little video to upload nonetheless. There is one extra thing actually as well. The last agent I spoke to, the interaction with her is a little shorter. It got cut a bit short. I'm not entirely sure why, but it did anyway. So that one, unfortunately, I didn't get as much out of it as I could have. But and I say as I could have, just I never got to speak to her for as long. But yeah, there's no deals at the end of this, no book deals. So spoilers, sorry if that's what you came in to see. That doesn't happen. But this is a nice little milestone, and I'm glad to have had audio footage of this. Also, there should be captions on this video. So, because the audios are quite hard to hear at times. So if you go to the captions option on the video player and put it on, there will be subtitles to help you understand what is being said. Anyway, sorry for this lengthy introduction. I'm sure you just want to get into the actual speed pitching. So yeah, that's all I've got to say, and I'm out. Peace. Yeah, I have now.
What are you studying?
Psychology.
Tell me a little bit about what you're working on.
Okay, so it's a young adult high fantasy story. I know it's discouraging to hear a new writer say it's projected to be 6 books, but it is. I thought about it a lot, and that's the amount it's come out to. And it's basically a story where I took, I started with a what if concept, and I said, okay, what if fate was an actual, almost kind of sentient thing, if it was actually real. The reason why I did this is because a lot of people in their stories have a very metaphorical kind of, fate's, it's just fate, it's destiny. And I said, what if that was a real thing that had its own agenda and imperative and was actually trying to control certain people? And so I made a story which had tropes in it, such as the chosen ones and stuff like that. And the entire purpose was to show how these different elements could be subverted and twisted over time, because of this force of fate and them trying to resist against it.
So is it a character? Is it a person? Is it an animal?
It's.
How would
I think that's part of the mystery of it, but it's. All right, I could tell you what it is, but basically the idea is that there's a person who's controlling it.
like a puppet
Yes.
master?
And they have essentially, this chosen one character. One of the main things I wanted to do was I feel like a lot of chosen ones don't have a real psychological impact with the way how they deal with things. So you have this character that's living on a farm and has a very normal life, and out of nowhere they're told you've got this destiny. And a lot of the time they resist it at first. They resist the calling, but then after a while they're like, okay, and they don't challenge it. So I thought, how could I create the most conflict between a chosen one and what they have to do? And one of the things I decided was to have a chosen one that was a pacifist. And the reason why I did that is because chosen ones, normally their destiny involves killing the antagonist. So like in Harry Potter's case, it's like you have to defeat Voldemort, but defeating Voldemort means killing him, basically. So I said, what if the chosen one they had a philosophy that went against their destiny? The reason I did this is because I think in a lot of stories, when a character's whining about having to fulfill their destiny, oftentimes the reader's like, just get on with it. But if there's a kind of moral thing here where the character's like, but should I? Who do I become if I do that? And the first book revolves around that question, amongst others, and it's resolved there, and resolved there in the first
It's
one.
in the first book. It's the focus.
Yeah,
is on
and
the
then
person.
and then the 2 books I have planned after that are focusing more on how she, unfortunately, degrades psychologically as a result of it. And so it's like what happens after with the chosen one. She's still a young character, but it's like, how does she deal with it? So now the world has come to her and said, you're the chosen one, can you do this and can you do that? And she's got to deal with the pressure of all these things. And at the same time, there's so many things I can't say, but at the same time, there's this fate thing. And in the first book, it's a bit more elusive, but as the series goes on, you realize that it's a real issue. Because what my characters want to do, they can't. And it's because, you're the chosen one. You're supposed to do this. That's what you're supposed to do. And, yeah.
I love the idea of the chosen one being pacifist and sort of philosophical moral dilemma. I want to know whether she decides to kill the person.
Yeah, that's kind of the...
That's the first book. And you follow her through. It's just one protagonist.
No, it's a dual POV, so it's her and another character who's also young, but she acts as like a mentor figure, but at the same time she's trying to figure out her own stuff.
Okay.
So she comes from this culture, which is basically a female-only race of people that I've called the Lemra, and they're like a sisterhood. And sisterhood is actually a very big theme in the book, which is maybe a bit strange for a male author to write about, but it is. I don't know particularly why, but it is, and I really enjoy it. And it's something that these two characters, they meet and they bond. There's lots of other characters as well, but they bond over time through these things. And the other character is trying to understand the society she comes from.
They're from two different societies.
Yes, the way it works is that the chosen one is from the human society. So she's not a human, but she lives amongst them, and then it's, you know, typical, like, oh, you're not actually like everyone else, you're special. Yeah, and then the other character turns out to be the mentor figure who's she's already part of the other world.
But she was living.
No, she's never been there. So
Is the
therefore,
human world contemporary?
no, it's an industrial era.
Like pre.
Yes. But so it's like this chosen one comes into that more fantastical world and learns how that works.
Okay.
And
Can they all travel between the two?
they can. It's floating islands, so it's not a different realm. So she and the female only race I have, they can fly. That's part of their magic. So they can.
What kind of age? Roughly what age? 60 now?
No. 14, only because I've heard that when you age your character, it's 2 years younger, the audience. So,
Is there anything else? It sounds really good. I'm really interested to read it. I don't do my age.
I know, I
Yeah,
checked.
but it does sound really good. Sorry. I hope I hope it's helpful you get a chance to read. But is there anything else you want to ask? But the pitch is very good.
I was just wondering, to be honest, I really don't have enough time to tell you everything, but it's really strange. It's not a normal type of series, and I wanted to know if it would be marketable, because there's a lot of elements which are, especially in the first book. It's very, very...
The pitch doesn't sound strange. It doesn't sound relatable. It sounds very relatable. But the children's market is very tough.
Yeah.
One thing I'd say quickly is make sure your manuscript is in the best possible condition before you send it out to agents. You only get one shot.
Yeah.
Make sure you feel like you can't do it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you.
It sounds great.
Hello.
Yeah. It's start all over again.
Okay.
Sorry, take a breath, it's fine.
Okay, so... Right. What am I supposed to do again? I'll tell you my stories. Okay, so my book is a young adult high fantasy novel.
Okay.
Series, sorry. Not novel.
So you've got a series in mind.
Yes. And as I said to the lady over there, I know it's discouraging to hear unpublished writers say like 6 books, but I thought about it and it is of that length. And essentially what it is it's a story about, well, the way I view it is how it started off with a what if idea. So what if fate was an actual thing, right? So fate is usually in stories a metaphorical kind of abstract concept. And I said, well, what if it was a real thing? And by that, what I mean is that there's somebody potentially puppeteering the power of fate and creating a world the way they want it to be. And so my characters are at the other end of this and are having to deal with that. For most of the series, they're not truly aware. Some mysterious characters are aware, but most of them aren't aware of what's going on. And the way how I decided to do this was to have quite typical fantasy tropes and subvert them. So for example, I have a chosen one, and I even made her very pretty, and gave her white hair, and I did on purpose. And you know, and she has to deal with, I think even at the beginning she might look in the mirror, which is a typical thing people do in their first books, but I made it so that she has to deal with this. And one of the core elements of her character is that she's a pacifist. And why this is important is because chosen ones, typically their destiny involves them killing someone. You know, so it's like, Harry, you have to defeat Voldemort, but defeating means killing him. And I said, well, that's cool and everything, but what if that character had a moral, philosophical issue with that? She's only one of 2 POVs that I have, but it is, I feel like thematically it's her book more. and so it's because the whole point of that first book is to kind of really show you this is the chosen one story, but it's not, so that because the next two books and get strange, really strange.
Okay. How many? So you say there's 6 books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How many of them have you obviously written the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Have you just ideas for the rest?
Yeah, I've begun outlining the other two. So the way I have it in my head, this is a bit strange, but it's split into arcs, which I know doesn't happen in books a lot, but the way I view it is that the first 3 are a trilogy and then the next 3 are another. But
And they link.
yes, but they link like very directly. But they do have very big differences. Like a genre shift happens, and I've discussed this with other people, and literally nobody's heard of what I'm doing. So I get worried about it because the first book, I think when I describe it, it sounds marketable, but then if I told people what I wanted to do in the books that come after, whilst it's organic to the story, I feel like they'd be like, oh, that's a bit too far out there for me. And I get worried about that. So.
Well, what I'd say is, us as an agency, we don't tend to market
YA,
young adult, but there's a huge market for it out there, and all 90, I'd say at least 90%, and that's because I quite like young adult myself. They have a series, so to go, a lot of publishers, when it comes to young adult, want a series of books. I mean, if you look, obviously Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Skullduggery Pleasant, which is about
Yeah, they tend to be trilogies at least.
Well, Skullduggery Pleasant, 7 books, and he started it quite young, and it grew up with his writers. But nearly all young adult books at the moment are series of books. Publishers want a series of books because it's something they can build on a brand, and branding is an important.
See, I think about that a lot, but then my worry is how ambitious it is, and I get scared that it's, I don't want to say too ambitious, but I get worried that it's just too different. And I'm saying that because, if a book goes on, like for example, someone who's doing something similar to me is this author called Pierce Brown, where he's got his Red Rising trilogy, and now he's making a sequel trilogy. But the difference is when people do sequel trilogies, normally it's like a reasonable amount of time between them, like 10 years.
Whereas yours all linked.
Yeah, but it takes place 200 years later, and the society actually changes.
But then
a lot.
But then in fantasy you can do that, and I think that's.
Can you? Because
I mean, if you look at Terry Pratchett, a lot of things happen in the same world, but it's not all the same section.
Okay, I get what you mean.
So as long.
But then a lot of the time when I watch things, agents say, "Oh, but just because this author does it, doesn't mean as a new writer you can do it." So I get discouraged.
I would have courage in your convictions.
I am confident. I'm confident that it's good ideas, but I'm worried that people. I don't know if I can effectively communicate it.
Okay. If it's a good idea, it will show through in the writing. So if you can communicate it, then it'll be in the writing to communicate it. In your head, you can. If it sounds too ambitious for you to even think about it, you can look at it as a trilogy, and then.
Yeah, that's usually what I do. I look at the first 3 as a trilogy.
If you want to, when you're ready to submit it to people, say it's a trilogy with a view to extending the story within the same world. So you sort of give them a small amount, but then you can. You can say you've got other stories within the world.
So could you say something like it's a trilogy but with sequel trilogy potential?
Yeah, with potential to expand the world.
Okay, yeah.
Because if fantasies tend to be set in quite often it's a world similar to worlds, but it's a different world, so you can create as much or as little as you like. With the Fantastic Beasts, it's technically.
Yeah. I think the reason why as well, because my trilogy ends really poorly, the first one, and that's not.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
So what I do is get the first book sort of as you want, submit, have a look at the writer's notice where it'll tell you who's looking at fantasy and books like that. Relance is quite often there's a.
I submitted it then.
Yeah, they do. They often do open. They don't always take unsolicited, but they do quite often have open days where you can pitch to them. So if you get a small pitch to them, keep an eye on their Twitter feed and their website, and also look at the other science fiction, young adult imprints. They quite often do open days where you can pitch your work to them and just get a pitch ready to send out there.
All right, thank you.
Best of luck.
Nice to meet you. My name's Amelia.
Hi.
So tell me about you and your writing.
Okay. Here we go again. My story is a young adult high fantasy series. Okay. And yeah, I've projected it to be about 6 novels, which I know is discouraging to hear.
Well, only the first one does really well, and then everyone will jump on it.
But it's basically the way I began with it is I had a what if idea, and the what if idea was, what if fate was an actual thing that was manipulating people in a way? So often in stories, fate is a metaphorical abstract concept, and I imagined, what if there was somebody, or maybe it's just the force itself, but imagine if there was maybe someone that was puppeteering fate and making it control things and create the world that they wanted. And the way how I decided to tell the story is from the perspective of 2 different characters in the first book, but the perspective of the chosen one. Because chosen ones typically, they have a destiny, right? It's like you have to do something because it's your destiny.
Yeah.
And their destiny usually involves them killing someone.
Yes.
And I've said, well, what if you took a chosen one and made them a pacifist? So now their destiny is, you have to kill the dark, person. And they're like, well, I have some moral issues with that. I don't want to do that. But like, that's not, and the reason why I liked that particular kind of subversion is because chosen ones often very, I don't want to say naturally, but I think their resistance is very minimal. They have like their initial, battle against the calling, and then it stops. They just kind of get on with it. And I wanted this to be a thing so this is the first book. The first book revolves around this conflict. And then afterwards, so unfortunately, obviously she's going to do it, afterwards, it deals with the psychological ramifications she has to deal with.
So her destiny was to be a pacifist, but she ends up killing someone.
Her destiny was to kill somebody.
Oh, okay.
And so, or at least she's told that's what her destiny is. And there is this force of fate which is supposed to make her do that.
Yeah.
And she as a person doesn't want to do it. She's a pacifist, and that's something she's decided in her, childhood and whatever. So, yeah. And then I have another character who is kind of like a mentor figure to her. She's also younger, but she's like a mentor figure. But she herself is trying to figure out some of the mysteries that are revolving around her society. So they live my chosen one protagonist lives in a different place to the other character, and that character lives on floating islands, and she lives with this kind of sisterhood. And the entire book is basically showing you the culture of this sisterhood and how this chosen one character grows up within it.
So both your protagonists are female?
Yes. Practically everyone in the book's female, actually.
Interesting. Why? Which is interesting, this process, because if it came in as an electoral exhibition, I would know, but obviously that's what you've chosen. But why did you choose that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I just thought about it a lot, and I think it's something. But my kind of, but it is, when I make a new story, my first instinct is to make a female character. And I've asked myself loads of times why. And I think the main reason is that I find it more interesting. Like it's just.
Maybe you can do something else to explore. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't matter. It's a nosy question. It shouldn't matter at all.
No, I think
do send us something. So this is our agency. My name's Jamila, and I would love to do something. I mean, young adult fantasy is a really growing area, so it's not something that we have a lot of anyone can do. But you can't deny that it's a really exciting area to get into. So lovely to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks so much.